My name is Walter Halpern. What I'm about to tell you will sound unbelievable. It will make you question everything you think you know about family, about love, and about what a man will do to get his life back. What I did next may shock you, but I promise you, by the end of this story, you will understand. I am not supposed to be speaking to you right now. As a matter of public record, filed, signed, and notarized, I am, in point of fact, deceased. 6 feet under, buried in plot 32B at Westridge Cemetery, right next to Susan, God rest her soul, the woman who somehow managed to love me for 40 years. But a funny thing about public records, they can be wrong. Not metaphorically wrong, not spiritually wrong, but physically, undeniably wrong. I'm right here, I'm breathing, my heart's beating a pretty steady rhythm. And I'm drinking what passes for coffee in a 2-star motel 30 miles from the house where I spent a lifetime. And I suppose you're already asking questions. Did he fake his own death? Is this some elaborate con? Is he a bad man? Just walk with me. We'll get there, I promise. But before we continue, make sure to subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. 2 months ago, I was just Walter Halpern, a retired school principal, a widower, a man with a bad knee and an unshakable morning crossword habit. My life was a predictable, quiet thing. And then came the pneumonia. A little chest cold, right? Something the body fights off. But my children, my beautiful, ambitious children, they saw something else entirely. They saw a clean slate. The hospital visit. I remember the flowers, the whispers, the way the light hit Robert's face. He was the first to approach the subject, the first, in what would become a series of elegantly executed betrayals. Dad, he said, his voice as smooth as polished wood, if something, happens, do you want us to manage the logistics? I just coughed, laughed a little, and told him, Robert, I survived your mother's cooking for 4 decades and a full-blown bronchitis attack in '97. I'll be just fine. He smiled and he nodded, but I could see the wheels turning behind his eyes. Not turning out of love, mind you. They were turning like the tumblers on a safe. I didn't know it at the time, but the combination to my life savings was already being worked out. 3 days later, I woke up in the facility. Not the hospital, not my home, a place of endless smiles and antiseptic corridors that smelled like lemon-scented betrayal. The nurse explained it to me, so calmly. Your children admitted you for long-term observation, Mr. Halpern, just until you've regained your strength. I asked for my phone. I asked for my keys. I was given a fresh Sudoku puzzle and some grilled chicken. It was a prison, a slow, elegant, comfortable prison. They fed me, they drugged me, they kept me comfortable until my life became a hazy, disconnected dream. And then I overheard it. We filed the paperwork yesterday. No assets will be contested. The house is already listed. No reason for probate. It was Robert's voice, talking to my lawyer, no less. And as I pressed my ear to the door, I heard the words that would become my epitaph. Walter Halpern, deceased, legally, financially, socially. They weren't waiting for me to die. They were just moving on. They were dividing up the scraps. The house, Susan's ring, my books, the very chair I used to sit in, where I read bedtime stories and taught him to hold a bat. And that's when you think, this is the part where a man breaks. But a man doesn't break. He waits, he plans, he disappears. They didn't want me to die. That would imply a shred of grief. They just wanted me to be gone. Quietly, like a television you turn down. And that, right there, is the difference between an act of God and an act of man. I left that night. I stole my own slippers, flagged down a cabbie, paid him with the cash I'd been stashing in the lining of my suitcase, a habit you pick up after 40 years in public education, let me tell you. And for weeks, I watched. I watched them laugh over drinks. I listened to them talk about the beautiful memorial they were planning. And I sat there, chewing a cold egg sandwich in a motel off Route 7, wondering if I should call a priest or a lawyer. I even saw the invitations. Join us to celebrate the life of Walter Halpern, a pillar of the community. A loving father, loving father. They wrote that down on a card and mailed it out. I taught them how to tie their shoes. I paid for their college. I held them when Susan died. And now they were using my name to get sympathy casseroles. I almost let it go. I really did. But then I saw the photo they picked for the memorial. Me, at my most tired, hunched, caught mid-blink. They didn't even try. And that was the moment. That was the moment I decided I would attend my own funeral. I walked in 10 minutes before the service started. I was wearing my best grey suit. The one Susan loved. The one I wore at her funeral. It seemed appropriate. The church was packed. A slideshow was looping on the screen. Walter the coach, Walter the teacher, Walter the late great. And I just walked down the aisle, toward the front. A woman screamed, not in surprise, in genuine, honest-to-God terror. And in a way, she was right. She'd seen a ghost. Robert was at the pulpit, a piece of paper trembling in his hand. "Hello, family," I said. Looks like I forgot to RSVP. Hope that's okay. The silence. It was a physical thing. Before anyone says anything, I said, I want to hear what you had planned to say about me. Go on, son. Eulogize me. I'm all ears. His hands were shaking. He read the eulogy anyway. He said I was kind, thoughtful, strong. He said I taught him about honor. I just laughed, loudly, right there in the church. You taught me something too, I said. You taught me how quickly blood forgets. My daughter Beth tried to hug me. I stepped back. You cremated a man they never identified, I said. You signed the death certificate. You wanted me dead so badly, you killed a stranger. It wasn't entirely true. They cremated a John Doe who died the same night I left. Robert just filled in the blanks. Fraud is like that. Convenient. I walked up to the front. For those of you here out of love, I said, thank you. For those of you here to collect pieces of a man you thought was gone, surprise. I'm still here, and I'm not alone. And that's when my lawyer walked in. He handed out the documents. The court orders. The revoked power of attorneys. The frozen asset transfers. Robert shouted. Beth cried. I just stood there. You know, I said, you could have just asked me to go. I would have left. I've lived too long to have to beg my children to love me. And I walked out. The slideshow still playing behind me. Me holding Beth in 85. Me and Robert at graduation. A man they used to know. Now I'm here. In a small cabin by a lake. I fish. I read. I write postcards to myself sometimes. They haven't found me. Maybe they don't care to. Maybe they still think I died again. And I'm at peace with that. Because this time, I chose to disappear. This time, it was my funeral. And I got to walk away from it. If you enjoyed this story, please give the video a like, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. For more stories like this, click the box on the right to hear the next one. Thanks for watching.